What's up, guys? You are listening to HVAC Masters of the Hustle podcast, and this is your host, J Dub Moneymaker, and welcome to episode 102, you guys. First off, let me say thank you for all my listeners out there, everyone that tunes in from the podcast every single week and lets me know how this podcast brings you and your company to that next level, you guys, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to climb the mountain with you guys, and I'm bringing everyone to the top with me. And for all my new listeners out there, make sure you guys smash the subscribe button and make sure you guys tell someone about this podcast in the industry, because like I said, this is helping thousands and thousands and thousands of people get to the next level. Also, at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to go ahead and float the website, www.hvacmastersofthehustle.com. That's masters with the S. Make sure you guys check out the swag, check out the training, and man, do we have a great episode for the podcast today. He's no stranger to the hot seat. You know, he's been a mentor of mine with the EGIA staff right there. Let's welcome Mr. Drew Cameron into the hot seat. How you doing, Mr. Drew?
Jason, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, man. So we had Weldon Long on podcast episode 100, and we talked about understanding your purpose, right? I wanted to get you on the podcast because there's three things that I talk about: purpose, what drives us, and our why, right? What I want to talk to you about is understanding your why, right? And that vision of your why. Can you go into a little bit understanding your why? Because you're a well-known national sales trainer in the industry. And I mean, you're one of the guys on top of the mountain. So what is your why?
My why for what I do is to be the best version of me that I can be. First for myself, then for my family, and then of course for my client or my audience, or whoever I'm working with, right? But years ago, it was always about, my why was about pouring out and giving to others. And I am others focused, but I realized that if I don't take care of myself first, I'm not being the best version of myself, and I'm actually giving less than 100% to my family or to my audience, or to a client. And so, number one, I want to show up as the best version of me. So I'm always refining who I am every day. I'm focusing now on my health and my nutrition and my sleep and my exercise, so that I show up physically the best version of me. Mentally, I meditate, I read, I journal, so that I can obviously be focused and clear. Then next, I want to make sure that I am the best resource for what I choose to be my vocation. So in this case, it's sales, right? So I'm constantly studying sales and communication and marketing and psychology and philosophy and human interaction. I get into studying the brain and consciousness and things of that nature, so that I am the best resource, not only for myself, but also for my clients and my audience. And so that every time I show up, I'm at least 1% better. That's the idea, is to be 1% better, than your previous version of yourself from yesterday, at least 1%. And if you do 1% in multiple areas, right, you get better physically, you get better emotionally, you get better spiritually, you get better vocationally. That becomes an exponential impact. Now, how do I, and why? So why do I do that? Because what I realize is the highest calling that there is, at least the way I see it, is the impact of other people's lives. And that's what I've chosen to do for a living. I realize that what I do makes an impact in the person who I'm working with, the audience, the salespeople that I ride along with and coach. It makes an impact in their life. It makes an impact in their family's life. It makes an impact in the business that they work in. It makes an impact in the homes of the people that they go and serve, right? So I figured if I was just working with people one-on-one, the impact was just that. It was one-on-one. But if I worked in a situation in which I help them to see the bigger picture, when I throw that pebble into the pond of me doing something with them, as we were talking about off camera a little bit earlier, that impact has a ripple effect. and it spiders out and hits so many people. So, what I realized years ago was that that's exactly what we were doing. We're all meant to be here to connect and impact each other. And so that happens to be my why, is to be the best version of myself, because I get to do that by learning from the people that I touch,
Mm-hmm.
and who come back to me. And so when I do a class, I learn as much as I teach, if not even more. I mean, I'm constantly taking notes.
Oh yeah.
When I'm teaching a class, because somebody will say something in the class, I don't have all the answers, but I'm a great student, and so I've learned things from listening to your podcast, things you've said and things your guests have said. So the
Absolutely.
idea is to be the best version of me, number one, so that I can give the best version of me to anybody else, so that I can make the biggest impact that I make.
Absolutely. And what do you think is, or how does one of my listeners find their why? I mean, everyone has their own whys, right? Everyone has their own walk of life.
Yeah, it's a great question, because why is that burning desire that gets you up, right? To do what you have to do, so you get to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if your why isn't big enough, you'll take a day off. Like I'm not saying you shouldn't take a day off for vacation, but like you'll mail it in. You're working, but you're kind of really not fully present. You're not fully there. The work doesn't inspire you to go out and do the things that are necessary. You'll start to procrastinate. You'll give 70%. And so your why has to be compelling and big enough to, I like to say, it needs to inspire you to aspire, to desire to go higher,
Ooh.
right? So we are inspired, fueled, fired up to go to this next level, because that's what we desire. And I'm going to catch fire and go higher, right? So that alliteration, if you will, is memorable to me, is inspire, aspire, desire, catch fire, go higher. What is that for you? What would drive you? I asked a guy this week. I was at a client in Milwaukee, and I asked the sales manager uh, to, tell me, do you even want to do this job? Do you like the company? Do you like what you do for a living? Why do you want to do this? And I was just challenging him, and he came back and he was very certain. Yeah, yeah, I want to make an impact. I'm very competitive. I was in sport, and I have a couple guys on my team, and I want to make an impact in those guys' lives. Um, and I want to win, and I want to help them win, and I want to help my company win, and I want to help the customers win. And so, what is it for you that drives you, right? And so, for me, it was asking the question, what's going to drive me to get out of bed in the morning? What am I going to love doing? And people say, if you do what you love for a living, you never work a day in your life. If you make your passion your purpose, you never work a day in your life. And I say that's not true. Okay. Because I watch you. You are a hustler. We were talking about that off camera, right? If you love what you do, you will work twice as hard, twice as long. You'll be the first in, the last out, right? Because you absolutely love what you do. You'll work harder than anybody else, because it is your passion, and is your purpose, and it fuels you. So I would tell people, using those types of questions, what is that for you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one thing that we talk about is, for my listeners, maybe you're a new listener to the podcast. My why is my son, right? That's the drive, the fire that's in my belly. Is I met my little boy at 7 months. My wife and I adopted him, right? And the fact of me holding this little boy, knowing the story of where he came from, knowing in my heart that there is no way that I was going to able or allow this little boy to go back to that type of lifestyle and fail my life, right? To have him go back to that lifestyle. So with that being said, every day I wake up, that's what fuels me. Is, one thing, I talked to Weldon Long quite a bit. And when he was on the podcast the first time, he said that there's no way that, if my son wants to go to Disneyland, that I look at him across the table and say, son, I can't do that because I'm too much of a chicken shit to ask for the order. Right. And
Right.
you got to know your inner beast as well. Me, I'm an introvert. I'm a very shy person, Drew. So if you're to meet me at a party or an event, I'm usually the guy on the couch, or my wife's texting me saying like, hey, come hang out with everyone, right? Because I'm shy. But when I'm on stage and everything like that in front of thousands of people, you got to get out of your comfort zone, because if you succeed when you're outside of your comfort zone and you deliver, right? God damn, who knows what you can do when you are comfortable, right?
Right.
So again, that's what fuels me, as my son understanding my why, and going in there, being able to stay in that batter's box and actually stay there and battle, because I do understand my why, right? So talking
Right.
a little bit deeper real quick, Drew, about technicians going in there, maybe not understanding their why, and they leave a lot on the table because they're going in tunnel vision, right?
Yeah. I mean, and if you don't understand what your job is as a technician, if you think it's a transaction, then yes, then you're pursuing a win lose scenario. So to me, I had to change that metric. I couldn't deal with the emotional ups and downs of sales and selling and winning or losing the
Mm-hmm.
job. And we teach this quite a bit through the EJIA training, and it's what I teach and coach in my client visits as well. Is when you sell, you're up; when you don't, you're down, so forth and so on. So those emotional roller coasters, they don't lend themselves well to peak performance. Peak performance is what I call what we call flow. Hence the name of our company, Flow Odyssey. And when you get in the flow, you're in the zone, right? And people go through streaks, or get into peak performance here and there, but you can't sustain that forever, right? A car or a machine can't run at highest output nonstop forever, right?
Yeah.
You need a little bit of time off and whatnot, but it shouldn't be based off of whether or not you win the sales. And so getting technicians to focus on, again, that's what I said, being the best versions of themselves, and teaching customers how to buy and where value comes from, and giving customers the best experience, and taking their focus off of whether or not they get the job, win or lose, right? That you want the customer to win. And if the customer wins by giving them good information so they can make a good decision, and you're agnostic to the outcome, to the result, whether or not you get the business, make the money, make the commission, so forth, you're agnostic to that, you win every time. In fact, you'll win more sales because you're not focused on the result. And that goes back to the mentality of John Wooden. He was the UCLA basketball coach in the 70s. At one point, they won 10 NCAA championships, 7 in a row. This coach had an 83.3% winning percentage. And he never coached the word win, not in practice, not in pregame, not at halftime. He said the emotional ups and downs of winning and losing take away the ability to execute at the highest level of excellence during a game. And so I just wanted our players to execute regardless of what the scoreboard is. The scoreboard is the result of the execution. So focus on the execution, not on the outcome, because you don't control the outcome in sales.
Yeah.
The customer chooses to buy, they choose not to buy. You have never, nor will you ever sell anything to anybody. People choose to buy, they choose not to buy. So when I teach a technician or a salesperson going into the home, I said, forget about the outcome. Don't worry about it. It's going to happen. It'll be what it's going to be. This customer's going to make a choice. Be the best version of you, give them the best experience, the best knowledge and information. Okay. Separate yourself from anybody else that's being considered, and let the chips fall where they may. And more often than not, if you do that with purity of intent, the result will be what it should be, which is you earning the business. Right. And so I get technicians to focus on, again, what is your why? It's not to be the best as far as numbers. It's to be the best as far as customer experience. The numbers will indicate whether or not you've made that connection. So when people talk about closing ratios, I say, no, you either connected or you didn't connect. It's a connection ratio, right? So focus on the connections. Don't focus on the number. The number is the result of the activity. People seem to think, I got to do more activity to get more results. No, you just need to be better at the activity. It's not the leads or the service calls that you get. It's what you do with the ones that you get.
I love how you change that mindset right there. Instead of looking at the closing percentages, look at it as a customer experience of connection, right? If you change your mindset of this is what my connection percentage is, I mean, that's going to go a lot, because Then you could follow up after your call. And it's very important, right? When we drive down the street, to park down the street because it's fresh in our mind. What did we do wrong in that appointment? And where did we lose disconnect where the homeowner didn't understand? Because at the end of the day, you guys, if you guys are getting price objections, right? It's not a price objection, it's a value objection. They did not see the value in the price that you were delivering. So maybe if you are in the presentation and you have the opportunity to go back, try to hit back on what you think that you missed or where that disconnect was. Or something that I've also found that works very well is if you guys have a disconnect and you need more time, fall back on something that you guys talked about that you had similarities in, right? And it will give you time to reconnect with that homeowner and then ask the order, because now you're connecting with them again. How do you feel about that, Mr. Drew?
No, you're spot on. And like you say, there is no such thing as a price objection. People don't object to price; they object to perceived value or perceived affordability, right? And so if your value proposition is off, well, then that's like you say, there's going to be a disconnect. There's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's either useful or not useful. It either serves or it doesn't serve. And as I said, you don't sell anything, and so when you come back and somebody says, "Hey, did you sell anything?" No, it's did the customer choose to buy or did they choose not to buy? And if they chose not to buy, why did they choose not to buy?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, was there something that I missed? Was there something that didn't resonate? Was there something that didn't connect? Relative maybe to somebody else, if they're shopping, as a lot of customers do, and the reason I believe customers, comparison shop is because contractors comparison sell. And this is the one thing as well as I do, especially on a replacement side of things, that you can't comparison shop this. All the value in what it is that we do is not in the thing, right? It's not in the box. It's in the design and the installation, and then in the configuration of what it is that we do, and then the confirmation and verification once we do the install, testing in and testing out. On the service side as well, it's not whether or not the machine functions, it's whether or not it performs, right? Because machines have a lot of potential, but they tend not to perform. The average duct system is 57% efficient.
Yep.
And so are you enlarging the scope of work to include everything that should be considered and let the customer make the choices on everything that should be considered? Or are you just looking at, oh, system's not running, bad contactor, bad capacitor, quote capacitor, quote contactor, oh, didn't get it? Or are you basically talking about, hey, maybe we should consider, rejuvenating the electrical system.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it should be a replacement. Here's a couple different things for you to consider, right? Your job is to give them all of the diagnoses, even if you don't do some of that work, right? So for example, you might talk about reducing the load by adding insulation, even though your company doesn't offer insulation, right? Be that resource that gives them all of the information, all the diagnoses,
Yep.
all of the options, for consideration, even if you don't offer them, and then let them choose. Because people choose to buy or they choose not to buy. And, again, when you basically start thinking about what did I do right? What did I do wrong? That results, right and wrong results in guilt and shame, fault and blame. I like to focus in on, did this serve the customer? Was it useful or was it not? Or did it not serve the customer? And if I focus in on, am I 100% present for this person and giving them information that's relevant to who they are and how they live and what they desire, the outcome, right? Because that's what people want. They want the result. They don't want the thing. You don't buy a big screen television because you want a big screen television. You buy it because you want to be immersed in the game or the movie.
Yeah.
Right? You bought the immersion experience of the game or the movie, right? We were watching Avengers Infinity War last night. It was on television. And so, I got that on 65 inches, right? So I'm completely immersed in the movie. I'm immersed in the Super Bowl over the weekend. I didn't want the big screen television. I wanted to be that experience of being immersed in the game. And that's compelling to me as a consumer. And so I bought the thing. I didn't want the thing. I got the thing.
Yep.
I bought the experience.
Yep.
Right. And so going back to where I said about comparison, contractors comparison sell, so customers comparison shop. In reality, technicians and salespeople, if they were compelling, there would be no comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But you're selling the same thing as everybody else. You look and sound and feel like everybody else when you sell the things. Sell the experience, sell the life impact, sell the, how your life is going to be different and better and improved, and how it's affordable, because that's what makes it valuable. And once you make it valuable, then you make it affordable with small monthly payments.
Absolutely. And that's, when you guys sell the experience, I'm telling you, that's when you get those 20, 30, $40,000 tickets, because you're offering everything. You're giving them the value and you're showing experience, right? Hey, look at Disney, right? You give them the experience and people pay thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, I was just looking, Walt Disney World's open, right? And I'm from California, and we don't have Anaheim open right now. So if I want to bring my son to Disneyland, I was looking at potentially spending $10,000 for an experience, right? An experience. So you guys have to understand, people buy off experience. So if we give them a big wow, the bigger the show, the bigger the dough, right? We give them that experience. I personally, as a comfort advisor, I'd go in with, some nice golf slacks, some shoes, shoe covers, a polo shirt. But let me tell you guys, the experience that I gave the homeowner when I went in there and crawled the subfloor and went into a jumpsuit, and they were like, holy cow, I thought you were wearing your dress shoes and your slacks. There was no way you were going to crawl my subfloor. The last guy didn't even do that, and he looked like Uncle Buck in his truck, right? But again, I showed him the value of what I was going to do working at one of the biggest companies. It's not the $20,000, $30,000 ticket and the other guy's at 20 or 15, right? It's the value of that gap, right? It's our in-house guarantees. How do I solidify that $5,000, you guys? Put a price on your in-house guarantees before you give them the options, and then you could tie them back into that. Hey, let me see their proposal, because all of our poker hands or cards are on the table. And then you go over and say, they don't offer 100% satisfied guarantee. Earlier, when I explained that, you valued that at $1,500. Our no limits guarantee, right? And you go down your line and then you say, which guarantee do you want me to take out? No one wants to lose that stuff. And then at the end of the day, yeah, everyone wants a Ferrari for the price of a freaking Honda Civic. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, people get what you pay. They know that you get what you pay for. I've been in so many homes, and customers, even say that. I was in a couple homes last week, or this week, excuse me, doing some ride-alongs, and the customer said that, and exactly what you just said, Jason, is, I honor you because you put the time in. You're not out there just telling people what they should do. You went out there and you did it and you lived it, as did I. And I hear all along customers saying, "Well, the last guy was only in here 30 minutes." Yeah. And most contractors, most technicians, most salespeople let that roll off their shoulder. I'm like, and I say, I find myself I find myself apologizing on behalf of our industry more than I care to admit, because here are the things you need to go through, Bill and Susan. I mean, there are things that we as a contractor have to do, and you as a homeowner should go through when making an investment of this magnitude. And so what we did is we did a complete customer survey, obviously, house survey, so we could do a heat loss, heat gain, load calculation. Went from the heat loss, heat gain, load calculation into an airflow analysis, because now I need to know, can I move the air, right? Went in there, we'd already plugged in the air advice when we walked in the house, so we have a report that's going to be ready in about 30 minutes, right? So we got an indoor air quality analysis, and then I can run an energy calculations. So right there, I've got 4 reports, right? Load calc, airflow, energy, indoor air quality. And so when a customer basically says, well, can you just email me the quote? Well, no, I can't. I need to actually go through the diagnosis with you first, right? And so, and I can even say, typically this is a 2-step process. Today's about gathering information. I can come back at a time that's convenient for you and your significant other or whatever. And then I can go back and go over those reports, or I can stay and I can go through them in the initial visit. It all depends on what their buying process is, because I don't have a sales process. I have an elevated consumer buying experience, right? And I'm going to basically match them and meet them where they live. I'm going to share information that's in alignment with them and how they make buying decisions when they make buying decisions. The problem with most salespeople, and again, I focus more on the comfort advisor side. I know you're tend to be more technician oriented, but customers are going to buy when they're ready to buy. not just because you're there and in front of them and offer discounts today and want to fill the installation schedule tomorrow. You need to realize that about 60 to 70% of the time should be a two-call close, two-visit close. You're not quoting on the initial visit because they're not going to buy today. And you got to use your judgment based on what you know about people and psychology and how people make buying decisions. I meet people when they're ready to buy. Okay, so and I earn that right. If I'm out there with just Bill or Susan, I earn the right to meet with the significant other. And because they want to see these reports, they want to share these reports. Nobody else is doing this. I mean, most contractors aren't even doing a load calculation, for God's sakes, let alone airflow, indoor air quality, and energy analysis.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Drew. What do you think the biggest missed opportunities for companies in our industry is right now?
Rephrase the question. I'm not sure, like from what perspective? What do you mean?
So perspective as, overall, you think it's because technicians aren't educated or companies aren't doing the educational that they need to do to lift the industry standards? So for instance, California, right? I sell things, average ticket 19.5, 20,000. I could do this in other states. I've proven it, right? So what do you think the missed opportunities that maybe other companies aren't doing in order to get those higher average tickets? Is it mindset? Is it just not lack of education? What do you think it would be?
Well, yeah, if it's mindset, it's lack of education, right? I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And we all live our lives based on what our beliefs are, right? So your core belief is that, like when I'm going to be doing a class this week in Orlando, I've got about 35 people showing up. I think that's the max that we can have. We're teaching a class in Orlando for EGIA on sales execution. And part of what I'll teach in that class is that you seem to think that your job is to run, and again, this is Comfort Advisors. You seem to think that your job is to run sales calls and give quotes, proposals, and close sales. No, your job is to teach customers how to buy and where value comes from. That's what your job is. Be the best version of you, teach customers how to buy and where value comes from. Three things. That's all that it is. The problem is that you seem to think that it's otherwise. And so everything that you do, all of your behaviors, all of your actions are based off of the belief that you think that's what your job is, to give out quotes and run leads and sell jobs. And technicians, you think your job is to go out there. When I ask technicians the same question, they tell me customer wants it fixed, they want a cheap price, so forth and so on, right? No, your customers, when they call you, want one thing. I don't care if it's on a service side or on a sales side. They want information. They want good information to make good decisions. Your job is to give them good information. Teach them how to buy, where value comes from, and let them make a good decision. Every person I talk to, including yourself, Jason, if I were to ask you this question, so I'll ask you. If you were buying something that was foreign to you, you didn't understand it, it's technical, you've never bought something like this before, and so you wouldn't even know how to go about making a buying decision. How would you select a provider, and how would you ultimately select the end product? And it was foreign to you. Okay, do you feel equipped, if you were educated, like, I'm sure you feel smart enough that if someone took the time to give you good information so you could make a good decision, do you think you'd make a better decision for you, your family, your home, and your bank account? Or do you think the salesperson would make a better decision for you?
I think the salesperson would make a better decision for me because they do it all the time.
No, I'm saying if the salesperson educated you and gave you all the information so that you could sit down with your wife, do you think you'd feel more comfortable making a better decision for you about what to spend, scope of work, how in depth to get? Or do you think a salesperson who has obviously maybe wants to make a sale, wants to make a certain level of sale, do you think a salesperson or the customer makes a better decision for themselves? Do you think what they feel?
If I have to say what
right?
they feel, it's going to be them. But for me, I'm going to go off the sales guy. But
Well, the sales
for
guy,
a normal person, it's going to be themselves. Yes.
Yeah, but at the point of decision, you're the one making the choice, right? And you might be making the choice based off of how that individual showed up and gave you information, but you're making that choice to go with that provider versus this provider, right? Versus the salesperson convincing you. every consumer seems to feel comfortable making buying choices on their own. It's why even when you go out into the retail space and the retail salesperson asks you in the store, Foot Locker or the department store, something like that, can I help you? And you say, no, thank you. I'm just looking.
Yep. Yep.
And I say, bullshit. You're not just looking. You wouldn't have walked onto the car lot if you weren't looking to buy a car.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You want to be hassled by a salesperson because you want to kind of go through this at your own pace. And then
Yep.
you'll get what you need from the salesperson when you're ready to take in that information. But every consumer basically feels if they were given the information, if they understood how to make a good buying decision, they would make a good buying decision. Right? And so that's what customers prize more than anything on the planet. Their sense of control and their right to choose. And so my job is to empower you with that information that respects your sense of control, but also respects and helps you with your right to choose. And so I just got to be a guide. And that's why you were so successful with what you did. You didn't basically show up and inflict your process on people and tell them what to do. You basically showed up and said, hey, how can I help? They tell you what's going on. You say, okay, you may want to consider one of these things, right? And if you're this kind of buyer, you might want to consider this. If you're this kind of person, you might want that. And if this is what's going on in your life, you might want this. Which would make sense to you?
Yep.
And you provided choices to people, okay? And you didn't get in the way of them making that buying decision. They chose to buy from you, and you were very successful. And now you're teaching others to do that.
Absolutely. I got to ask you a question. I watched one of your videos, and one of the videos that you said that really stood out to me was the client that comes in. We come in every single time, and they say, every time your guy comes in, you try to sell me something, right? To a mindset of a technician, when they go into a house, that could deplete them, right? What would you say to a technician that walked into a house and the homeowner said, oh, the last couple guys that came in, you guys are always trying to sell me something, right? And it's depleting them. What's your thoughts for them, Drew?
In life, and it's a great question, Jason. And in life, life gives you signals, life gives you feedback, right? And so it's telling you to pay attention to something. Clearly, however, the last several people showed up in the house, it came across as selling versus educating and informing and sharing information, right? And so again, you don't know, you're there as a technician today. So I'm there as the technician today. I don't know what Steve or Bill did the last time. And so what can I do? That's what I would ask myself. What can I do? Because I can't undo that. But what I can do is address the situation that's in front of me and say, I'm sure that's, empathize with the customer, embrace it, don't push back. Empathize with the customer. I'm sure that didn't feel good, did it? And I do apologize on behalf of our company, our team. And again, if you have, obviously now you have the service history in front of you, I do apologize on behalf of Bill and Steve, because I know that's not their intent. I know that's not what's in their heart. We look at our job simply as this, Bill and Susan, and I can say this to now these homeowners. We look at our job as simply as this. My job is to come out, find out what's going on with you, your home, your family, and how did we get to where we are today? What caused it? What could have been done possibly to prevent it? What's the condition of yours? And what could you do? What could you consider? And my job is to offer you everything that's available for you to either solve today's problem or enhance, and prevent the problems in the future, and possibly enhance your home and your system. And then your job is to make good choices. And we as a company have basically come to the realization we'd rather apologize for oversharing and over communicating and letting you know all of the options that are available to you than not remind you or make you aware as to what's available to you. Because if at some point something happens or you weren't aware of something, then you're going to come back to me and say, well, you didn't tell me this. I wasn't aware. You didn't share that with me. And so, I'll apologize, in advance for over communicating today, but that's all we were trying to do. And I apologize, but that's great feedback. I'll go back. I'll let the office know, but I'm not here to sell you anything you don't want, you don't need, you can't afford it doesn't make sense to you. Those 4 things I would not say it by counting it off in front of a homeowner. I would just say it. I'm not here to sell you anything you don't want, you don't need, you can't afford it doesn't make sense to you. I'm here to share with you information as to what's going on, how we got to where we are today, how it possibly could have been avoided, what's the condition of your situation, and what could be done. I'm going to let you know everything that can be done. I'm going to give you all the choices, all the options, and then I'm going to give you good information so you can make a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can make a good decision. You let me know what you want to do. But that's our philosophy as a company. And so again, I know that, you know that, right? So take ownership of the last two guys
Yep.
and own their stuff. You don't have to basically take, fault and blame and guilt and shame here, just to ownership and responsibility, because you are a representative of the company, of the team. Explain the philosophy. Maybe they didn't take the time.
Mm-hmm.
I go into a lot of houses with a lot of guys, and it's mostly guys. I wish I could ride along with some women in this industry. It tends to be few and far between, but I go into a lot of houses, and people, technicians and salespeople, they do what they do and they say what they say, and they never explained the value of what they were doing and why they were doing it.
Mm.
We were on a call this week, and we went in on a house, and we were measuring the entire house, and the salesperson never explained to the customer why we were measuring the house. And the customer literally said he had his iPad out, and he's doing a load calculation, and the woman looks over at her husband, and she says, "Frank, he's hitting a lot of buttons." Thankfully, the salesperson didn't miss a beat, and he owned it. And he goes, "I guess you think it's going to be expensive because of how many buttons I'm hitting." He goes, "But I'm actually doing a heat loss, heat gain load calculation." But see, she immediately thought and was triggered by the fact that he's hitting buttons, and she was in her 70s, so she's of the day of a calculator and an adding machine, right? And so the more buttons you hit, the more expensive it gets.
Oh yeah.
And had he just told her, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and size the equipment. I measured the entire house to put all that information into the system so I can size the equipment and then verify the airflow, blah, blah. He could have explained that, but he almost got himself into trouble because he just did what he did.
Yeah. And that's crazy to me, Drew, that we go out there as technicians, comfort advisors, right? And we do manual J heat loads, and we don't educate homeowners on this stuff when really, I mean, me traveling, you traveling, going to different companies, 80% of people don't do this or don't talk about it, right? So why not be that 20% that does it and talks about it and makes yourself different? At the end of the day, I can't tell you how many times I've done heat load calculations, been the second or third guy out there, built value in what I did, and they went with me and up front, "Oh yeah, I'm getting multiple estimates." Okay, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your process. But what you're going to see is my process. I'm a premier company, and that's what separates me from my competitors, because I'm not shortcutting my steps. I'm going to give my homeowner 100% every single time, you guys. I don't care if it's a hoarder house. I don't care if it's, a tenant rental situation. You treat everyone the same. And I promise you, sky's the limits of your closing percentage, your average ticket, and everything else will go up.
I love the word you use right there. Separate yourself. People talk about differentiation. No, you need separation.
Oh, absolutely.
And what you want to do is the way you separate yourself is by the things that you do and the things that you say, and the things that you don't do and the things that you don't say. And that load calculation is paramount to that. And my load calculation, which you're familiar with, takes basically 5 to 10 minutes to do a residential block load. And then we spin that laptop or tablet around and we show the customer that, on there. And then I can say, okay, now let's go look at the next piece, the airflow. So many beach balls of air we got to move, right?
Yep.
In the system to make sure that we basically get the heating and the cooling into the house, because can only exhale what it inhales based on the lungs of the system. And so, you've got to stand out and separate yourself. And if you do it, here's the cool thing about all this. It's no longer my opinion then, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, up to this point, we're all offering opinions. But now I got into math, facts, science, data, and third parties of stuff. And it's no longer me versus them. Listen, Bill and Susan, you don't need to do business with me or ABC Air, my company, right? But you need to do business with somebody like me, who basically does the standard, right? Does the load calculation, does the airflow analysis, does the code, does the safety, does all the things that you're pointing to the standard, right? Because that's not my opinion. It's third-party verification of what a good contractor does and what a good results, how you're going to get a good result.
And that's, you bringing out third-party articles is huge, right? we have to back up information that we give with third party article, or it doesn't solidify what we say, you guys. It's so much powerful when you say, hey, we're, X, A, B, and C heat and air. We're top ranked in the state of California. There's a website called Build Zoom. You guys check it out. You can click that website in your presentation and it will bring you to there. Or, the Department of Energy, right? They have so much information talking about manual J heat loads, not going with a contractor that doesn't do it, shortcutting processes and procedures, right? So making sure that we do all this stuff, because at the end of the day, if we do this stuff, you guys, all we're doing is bringing the industry standards up, and we're doing it together.
You Drew, said something right there too you said something right there that's real important about third-party articles and having them in a book, have them in sheet protectors or laminated and, or electronically on your iPad, right, where you can reference them and pull them up. If you're making the mistake of telling customers, go on the internet and find this stuff, right? Go search this, right? Or go to the ACCA website. Okay. They never will. No. You got to make this thing easy for them. So you pull out the article, you show it to them. You can, or send them a link to it, but I wouldn't even send them links to it because they're not going to go on the link. They're going to get the email. They have good intentions. They're just not going to get around to it. So pull out the information in front of them, show them on your iPad, show them in a book. I like books, right? As many restaurants as there are in the United States, how many of them have gone to an electronic iPad for the ordering process? And I'm not talking about like Applebee's or Chili's where you get the little tabletop thing where you can play games too and stuff like that. I'm talking they lay an iPad out in front of you for you to make all of your buying decisions. Yet contractors are trying to go to this. It's a mistake. Yeah. I mean, if it worked, people in restaurants who own restaurants would do this on a regular basis. Even the ones that I have been to that have done it have gotten away from it. They go back to a menu. It's like a catalog. How hungry are you? What do you feel like eating? You pick the choices out of the menu. Okay. The waiter or the waitress doesn't determine the bill at the end of the meal. You did based on what you selected. So that's exactly what your flat rate book should be on the service side. That's exactly what it should be on the install side too. Just a quick question. This is the last question to wrap up the podcast, but I have to ask you, Drew, do you think, because I talked to another couple big trainers, not part of EGI or anything like that, but they're thinking that potentially the industry could be going towards Zoom meetings, sales meetings, appointments, and things like that. How do you feel about that? Well, let's put it this way. I always look at somebody's agenda and what they're saying and ask, why are they saying what they're saying? Because they want to be different, right? Last year, we heard about virtual service calls and virtual sales appointments. And I'll tell you what, if you're going that way, great, love it. I can't wait to come in behind you and basically eat your lunch, because it's about, we talked about this pre-call, right? Before we jumped on here, about connecting with people. You've got to connect with people. Yeah. And I got to go into the house and I got to lay my eyes on the system and I got to look at the ductwork, right? I might be able to start the process somewhat virtually, but there's no substitute for getting into the house and seeing what's going on in the house and how they live and, and feeling the comfort problems. I can't test the air quality over the phone. I got to go out and put the air advice box in the house. I can't measure airflow and BTUs, right? I can't look for code violations and safety issues. Yep. And so these guys, I jokingly say they're smoking crack, right? I mean, they are just high as kites if that's what they're thinking. And I would have to I would have to agree. The reason why is, I hear about guys selling off Zoom and everything like that. Again, it's the experience, right? There's no experience when you're just online. And then to me, it's, if you guys are saying you're being successful doing this stuff, what's the go back? What's the red tags? What are we missing? Let me know that percentage of, hey, we're selling X, Y, and Z online, but what's the go backs on those? Yeah. Here's what I said all during, COVID last year and continuing to this year. I get it. Some people are triggered by, the virus and what's going on, and maybe they have an issue in the home and whatnot. I'm going to come from a place of confidence, certainty, leadership, and strength. And I'm going to say, I understand that's what's going on, Bill and Susan. And I'm sorry you're having to deal with that. But at ABC Air, we're taking the necessary precautions to come from a place of leadership and do the right things. Now's not the time to basically take shortcuts with the system that is the lungs of your home, right? And the air quality in your home. So we're taking the precautionary measures because we understand, how important this is. Here's the thing about the virus. We can capture it and kill it if we can bring it through the system. The only way I'm going to know whether or not we can do that, or if your system's capable of doing it, is to show up and do what's necessary. And then I can go all third party and talk about all of that. Bottom line is, I talk about this in all my training, and so we'll bring this conversation full circle, Jason. Right? It's how are you showing up? How are you showing up? It starts with you, right? And when I say left and right all the time, is success in anything starts and ends with you, but especially for technicians and salespeople going into the home and connecting with people in their lives and their families and their homes, right? It starts and ends with you. Success in this industry starts and ends with you, but it has nothing to do with you because it's not about you. It's about them. Mm-hmm. And how are you showing up in their lives? Are you showing up from a place of strength and certainty and confidence and leadership? Or are you showing up from a place of weakness and you're hiding behind a camera in an office somewhere because you told yourself a story that customers don't want me in their home? Well, that's because you didn't show up from a place of leadership and teach them how to buy and where value comes from, and tell them, hey, I got to do a load calculation. Don't take my word for it. ACCA says it. AHRI says it. The Department of Energy says it. Consumer Reports says it. Here, let me send you those articles, Bill. And says, I know you don't want me in a home. I'll send you these articles. Oh, you don't want me in your home? Then I understand. We may not be the right company for you, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Right. And I want my listeners
own your value. You were telling me that before this call. Own your value.
Absolutely. Own your guys' value. And, at the end of the day, Drew, I got listeners from installers, technicians, business owners, dispatchers, and comfort advisors. What would you like for them to get out of this episode of HVAC Masters of the Hustle?
Well, let's go back to what you said at the beginning and what we just ended up with. We brought it all full circle, right? Know your why. Why are you doing this, right? For my queen and my kids, they're everything to me. The impact that I get to make in people's lives and the industry and legacy, that's all secondary, right? Obviously, it's being the best version of who I am so I can serve at the highest level, take care of my queen and my kids, live a great life, right? And contribute to other people's lives, pay it forward, pay it backward. And that's my why. So understand your why, then understand your value and own your value, right? And go out there and make an impact in people's lives. Don't focus on the outcome and the result. Focus on the impact and the experience and the information and how you show up in people's lives. Be 100% present because that's the gift. Your presence is the gift in the home, and how you show up is the biggest difference. Live a life by design, not by default, right? When you get up in the morning, set your thermostat, but don't be a thermometer, right? Because a thermometer is powerless to change its environment and circumstances. A thermostat controls everything. And that's what you do. You're starting your day and ending your day right here. And at the very end of all of it, and I'll close on this, be grateful. Be grateful for the opportunity. You may have not got the sale, but be grateful for the fact that they invited you in your home. They were willing to listen. And so I want to thank you and your listeners for listening to me today. And I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's my third time with you, and I appreciate it every time. And I learn from you, and the questions that you ask me, because it gets me to double down on what I believe.
Absolutely, Drew. And thank you for being a guest in the hot seat, brother. I know you're a busy guy, and it's an honor for myself. So thank you very much.
Likewise, my friend.